Welcome, I'm Troy Bond. I'm the administrator of this virginity. And who might you be in that pure and white suit that's making Lando feel a little uncomfortable? You sounded like one. Oh, is Will Diamond back for two in a row? Will Lobot, all the way in Naples, Florida, aka. What Star Wars planet would you compare that to if you had to compare? What's a Dagobah?
Yeah, probably Dagobah. It's filled with gators and Wookiees and other women that just look like Wookiees.
Yeah, like the one in the Jabba's palace, who's credited as Fat Woman. Did you know that? You of course knew that.
That's on my resume.
Oh my God, that is amazing. That she's credited one of the Jabba's dancers, not to get right into it, but one of the Jabba the Hutt's dancers in this palace is credited in the Return of the Jedi credits, in both the original and the one that's on Disney right now as Fat Woman.
Yeah.
They gave Jet Porkins a name that felt insulting, and they went, you know what's going to be even better? Calling her Fat Woman. Her real name was supposed to be High Cholesterol. We are also joined, much like Star Wars, there is one woman in this cast. Our princess, to me, she's royalty, Slater Harrison.
Hey, what's up? Fat woman live. I lost a lot of weight.
I think one of the things I love about Star Wars is this universal love language. Every year they hold the celebrations in different countries. I met both of you through a Star Wars, where we got connected through a Star Wars bond. Will, we immediately knew you were the same level of Star Wars nerd. I have the lightsaber that you gave me when I was in Naples, Florida, behind Darth Vader. It's from 2006, from when we used to be a country. And Will gave me that and a bunch of stuff, and he gave me a Biggs figure. Like, for somebody to give you a Biggs Dark Lighter figure, you have to be like, okay, there's something just connected there. And it was funny because it happened in a comedy club, and Slater and I met when she was doing stand up at Gotham Comedy Club, and she had a joke about Star Wars, are you wearing a Star Wars shirt?
No, I just did the joke about Star Wars, which I never did again. But that one night, it was fate.
That was right after The Last Jedi came out, and it was the only time I felt like talking about Star Wars. So it was you were a beacon of hope there. Will is such a encyclopedia and a love and a passion for it, where like that's a lifelong thing. Where did that start for you?
Whoo! My grandparents, for some reason, it's actually very funny, and I texted you this because you gave me a very nice present. The special editions of the original trilogy is where my fandom started, like a lot of kids in the late 90s. I had the VHS box set upstairs at my grandparents' house for some reason, and my ADHD ass, when they would send me upstairs to be like, the adults are talking, go do something else, I would go upstairs and put the VHS tape in, and it would always be the original trilogy. And I actually have the box set over there behind me. That's the one that you gave me, and that's the one that I literally watched at my grandparents' house. So they're right next to each other. So it was a very cool gift that you gave me, that signed by Mark Hamill, by the way. I have a signature from Mark Hamill. Do you? Probably don't.
Slater can tell you, when I got that, I was telling her every day shipping updates, because I was like, I cannot wait for Will to get this. I understand why my mom watched us open Christmas presents now. And the fact that it was Empire, which was the first Star Wars movie we watched together in St. Petersburg, my favorite movie, because my grandfather looked like Billy D. Williams. And my dad told me I had the same original trilogy story, and we didn't have cable. We had Blues Brothers 2000 and the original trilogy. And my dad told me that Billy D was my grandfather. I'll send you a picture. You can see the side by side. They look exactly the same. And I could quote 95% of Empire Strikes Back before they weren't sure whether to test me for nonverbal autism or not, because that's the only way I was speaking to people, and still do. And it's there's people who there's fans of mine who started watching it 4 months ago, and they're cosplaying now as Mara Jade. Like, how insane and beautiful is that? Slater, I know that like you had your sister is really into it. She loves Grogu. Shout out to your sister Steph.
My dad used to be our bonding time. He would take me to the theaters to see every Star Wars movie when it came out. He made me watch A New Hope VHS, and then you heard in separate podcasts how obsessed I was with that cover, which is very sexual, and I was probably like 7 or 8 years old, so that's a little concerning.
And the movie had a very small budget, and the whole budget went into the baby oil for that poster.
There's no underwear in space, George Lucas.
Yeah, there's no underwear in space. Was that an escape or like a time you just got to have with your dad? Because that's what it was like for me too.
Yeah, it was like right when my parents got separated before they got divorced, not to bring down the vibe, but
No. I mean, what had happened? Did your dad promise to bring freedom and prosperity to the Republic? And then she said, "I can't believe what I'm hearing."
And then she said,
I wonder what happened with George Lucas's dad or what he did to him. Because every time I watch the last fight between Luke and Vader, I like get emotional. You know, I don't go anywhere when that fight's on. I stand up in front of the TV and I rewind like 6 times because I'm like, why is this healing me? And I don't like this, but like it's just it's George Lucas is that meme thing. It's about family. I used to think that I was kind of a normie or a simp for having so much passion for something that was so pop culture accessible, and I didn't know any like Fellini films, but like I could tell you how many parsecs they did the Kessel Run in, and then I realized it's because it's the greatest story of all time because it combines every story of all time. If somebody comes to me, I've never seen Star Wars, I'm like, that's fine, you're not missing much. You're like, I'm not going to show it to you because it's not going to mean to you what it means to me, and I'm going to ruin your experience by making you watch it.
I feel like you had to grow up with it, kind of. I don't know why. I feel like it's a rite of passage almost, you know?
That's what makes it so interesting when like my like you shout out to Jade, you met in Grand Rapids. She was the one who started dressing up like Mara Jade. Whose last name is Jade. And she started watching the movies in November, and like I watched all of them have is that Attack of the Clones on in the background?
It is.
that's awesome.
Oh my God.
That's one of my favorites. I don't know if that's
It's the best one out of the prequels.
okay. I didn't know what your guys' opinions were, and I was like, yo, it's mine. I will die on this hill. I don't care. I think it's the best one. I was obsessed with Natalie Portman.
I think it's the best one too. I'll fight them all, the women and the children too.
He like reverse Titanic that situation. He's like women and children first.
Can you imagine that whole movie, but with Leo DiCaprio as Anakin Skywalker, because that's who it's going to be?
Speaking of Leonardo DiCaprio, the Leonardo DiCaprio of the Secret Identity podcast.
Oh, not Brent Danger. What have you done on my ship? Oh, he's outside in Chicago, you old pirate. Look at him. He's gotten 2 degrees tanner in the coldest, windiest city there is. How you doing out there I'm in Cloud City. You're in the windiest city, old pirate.
I'm in the Windy City, baby. It's beautiful out here. It is the opposite of hot.
And still sweating on the podcast, even though you're not stuck in our stew. I love it.
Everyone's got to have an identity.
Well, I have to also shout out Brent, who is like at a work conference and works a job and takes time out of his career to do this podcast and is at a conference. And
what are you doing? It's important to only eat when the sun is down.
Well, you came in at a perfect time. What? Tell me your introduction to Star Wars, Brent. Like, do you remember watching it? Like, do you remember how old you were when you saw it?
Yeah, I remember. Honestly, I don't even remember watching the original as a kid. I remember loving Empire because I loved the music for the dark side. I really got into it during Phantom Menace. I was maybe 6 years old when I saw it in the theaters. I don't think I'd ever cried before in a movie. But
you cried during Phantom Menace?
Dude, Qui-Gon, man.
Yeah, that gets me every time, too. It gets me when he's holding Obi-Wan's face. He is the chosen one.
I was upset when Ra's al Ghul died because I still thought of him as Qui-Gon.
And you grew up during the prequel era, like the rest of us. Like, so we have a softer spot for it, I think. And I think the kids who are growing up with the sequels now are going to be like what we were as prequel kids. I love it all because when it's out, we get to feel a little more relevant, and that means that people want it and that we're going to get more of it. I love it all.
Absolutely. Imagine being a kid and seeing that Vader hallway scene in Rogue One for the first time.
I mean, I remember feeling that as an adult and losing it, just being like, no way they're going to do this. They're not that was the first Disney Star Wars movie that made me have tears down my eyes. As soon as he lit the lightsaber and then he was just cutting into them like blue milk butter up to the Carrie Fisher PS2 cutscene at the end, just tears. no Star. I did cry when Luke died in The Last Jedi because I was like, this can't be how it happens. But like that Rogue One hallway scene makes me emotional just when like on a Tuesday. And now any kid with a Disney Plus subscription can get an extended version of him stabbing lightsabers into little kids on Obi-Wan.
Lucky
bastards. The day Revenge of the Sith came out, I got suspended from school because I was so hyped up to see it. And I was like, it was May 19th, 2005. And I was sitting in line waiting to go into my classroom. I was like, Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. Some kid touched my shoulder and I just turned around and clocked him and his lip went into his retainer. And my dad came to pick me up and took me to see the movie. I know we have you for a short amount of time, Brent, so I won't keep you. What else? You said you watched the original trilogy recently. What sticks out to you?
I think what sticks out to me, it's such a good question, but I feel like when YouTube first came out, I would just rewatch the fight scenes over and over again, particularly in the prequels. Like it truly is an incredible hero's journey. Like what they do with Luke from beginning, middle, and end, and also just the way Han comes around. I mean, I forgot how amazing it is when Luke is flying in to blow up the Death Star, and all of his support has been killed, and then Han comes in. He comes in with the assist.
Tears every time. You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and fuck Carrie Fisher and go home and go home. Let's go home.
Great shot, kid. 1 in a million.
Great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million.
I stood up and fist bumped the air. I was like, holy fuck, Han really is the man.
They didn't need to make a sequel to that movie. And the fact that I think that's what makes Empire so special is they did have to make a sequel to that movie because that was the pinnacle of the sequel being better than the first. Like, I'm sorry. People love the original. I understand. I call it Star Wars. I'm not going to call it A New Hope. I love it, but Empire is Will, I know you're partial to ROTJ. I love Return of the Jedi too. It's honestly great. I watched it high once in theaters, and I was like, yo, how did this get made? like the first third of the movie when they're in Jabba's palace, I'm like, not for nothing, T, but what's going on? Is that a fat woman right there?
I honestly rewatched the Robot Chicken Star Wars trilogy more recently
So
than I watched
good.
the original one. So good when they do the Yao Proof guy,
Yariel Proof. Who can't use the Force? I can use the Force. That's you as a fucking Jedi, Brent. It's so great.
That's why I am one of 13 Jedi on the Jedi Council. Now it is my turn to get the pizza. Sure, yeah, my parents are very proud.
Can I ask what the prophecy is? Why is that something I don't know?
I'm hoping that the era of that parody comes back because the College Humor stuff was amazing. The Robot Chicken stuff was great. The Family Guy trilogy stuff was great. There's just you gotta have that to have the fandom, right? Because that's who watches that? The fans. You know, like, and then they're like, "Oh man, all right, I'll buy this Mandalorian shirt," even though I haven't really liked a lot of what's been going on. I laughed at the last Family Guy thing, whatever. Like, put the comedy and nerd stuff infuses so well together because it speaks the same language. And even if you don't speak the same language, like me going overseas, people bringing me, like, there's an Arkham Asylum thing above me, that Gotham City thing over there, there's something over here that all came from overseas of people who were like huge Star Wars fans because they watched it dubbed in whatever language they watched it in. We have that connects us. Like, it's an energy field created by all living things. It's like candy for your brain. It's like a kid thing. It's like you can get mad that the bombs are dropping in space because there's no gravity in space, but guess what? There's no Yodas in space either. Like, just watch the movie. That's what I would take away from it. Like, and it brings people together more than it tears people apart. And there's just so much history behind it.
Like, I love getting to learn Star Wars from just you got, like, in the corporate America, we say SMEs, subject matter experts. You guys truly are SMEs when it comes to Star Wars.
Brent is not lying. He texted us at 8:00. Will and I both texted back at 8:01.
Dude, literally, I woke up to that. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably 50 texts because I felt like Will and I were like I was his shadow for the day at teaching a class. And it was great. I was like, here's my theory, but my Mr. Diamond may correct me on that. And then he pulled out his long stick and went, actually, during the Clone Wars, the Jedi Knights were looked at as officers, as opposed to the Galactic Civil War, a relatively time of peace.
Brent, I'm glad you asked that though in the group text because I was curious about that too, and I never really realized.
What was the question?
Yeah.
So my question was, I always viewed Vader as number 2 in the Empire to Palpatine, particularly like in Rogue One, when Krennic wants an audience with Palpatine, he goes to Vader. So I thought it was strange rewatching the original Star Wars, where Vader is really taking orders from Tarkin. He doesn't take shit from anyone else on the Death Star, but he really seems to follow Tarkin's orders. So I was wondering if Tarkin was ranked ahead of Vader.
Can we answer this the way we answered it this morning? Because I thought it was pretty insightful, Will. So my initial analysis of it was that Darth Vader series that came out that detailed the events after the Death Star, and Commander Tag, who's the one on the Death Star roundtable, who said, "Until this battle station is fully operational, we are vulnerable." And the Emperor promoted him above Vader because the Emperor was pissed that Vader let the Death Star blow up. So he had to answer to Vader. And at the end of the series, Tag fails at something, and Palpatine goes, "Lord Vader, show him the price of failure," and chokes him out. But like, Vader wasn't really looked at as a guy that they had to fear. Granted, there was a time, like 2 weeks into the job, where everybody wasn't really sure who Vader was, and Emperor Palpatine was like, "Everybody come out to the courtyard, line your asses up. I'm going to call out 17 random numbers, and you step forward." And they stepped forward, and Vader killed all 17 of them at random. And Palpatine went, "This is my right hand. If he says something, it comes from me. If you don't listen to it, you will be like these guys who live on the floor for the rest of their lives, dead." And they were scared of Vader, but very few, I think, ever really interacted with him because he wasn't like hanging out with the officers and the stormtroopers. He had his own garrisons. He was doing tasks hunting down Jedi where like the bureaucrats weren't going with him on that. So it was very easy for them to talk down to him. So it wasn't until the Death Star blew up where he sort of had to take on the Dick Cheney enforcer role, and he wasn't even really worried about that because his main focus between 4 and 5, he finds out that Luke is his son. Because he contracts Boba Fett to find him, and he finds out it's Skywalker. He doesn't necessarily. Nobody takes in a part of Tarkin, would you say, Will? Right? Like nobody fills in for a Moff Tarkin. They lost Grand Admiral Thrawn and Moff Tarkin in a year, and it was just Palpatine and Vader. I think that's why he kept promoting Piet. When the Emperor died, Luke Skywalker walked into there with Darth Vader, and Luke Skywalker walked out with a dismembered Darth Vader and no Palpatine. So in his mind, Luke killed the Emperor and chopped up Vader's ass. So that's why he was so terrified of him. But like it all just sort of fractured, like the Nazis in Argentina, and he's like this crazy warlord.
The entirety of the dark side of the Force is about controlling not only your emotions, but letting them fly. So if you can have control over somebody else and control their emotions, they're the easiest lapdog you're going to have. And nobody is more headstrong and emotional than young Anakin Skywalker. If you need a guy to do political negotiations, Anakin Skywalker is not your guy. So once he loses a few limbs, he's the perfect candidate to just be a lapdog to run around the galaxy and take care of your dirty work. I mean, you said it just now, Troy, of like the ISB and the bureaucracy of the Empire is where Tarkin shines. We see it in the Bad Batch with Dr. Hemlock, and there's so much going. And in Andor, Vader is the guy who isn't held down by paper pushers. However, Palpatine does put those paper pushers ahead of him because when you look at somebody in terms of power, yeah, Vader is going to be able to take down this geriatric pogo stick. However, if the geriatric pogo stick is in charge of you, Vader, he's going to be even more mad, which is easier for Palpatine to control. I mean, the whole thing with his mechanical suit and just Vader being a lapdog for Palpatine the entire time, which I know we talked about earlier in the group chat. It's like from the original Star Wars all the way to Return of the Jedi, you talk about the prequels being Anakin Skywalker's fall. Anakin Skywalker's fall is from the end of Revenge of the Sith all the way to Return of the Jedi because he becomes this broken man. Obviously, the visual storytelling of him being a mostly robot person, and Luke having to find the man within him. But Darth Vader being a broken man is literally the story of the original trilogy.
And I think George did such a great job at analyzing evil with the prequels. By everybody was so upset that they had to see a young kid as Darth Vader, but like, no, that is where it starts. Like, it starts when these kids are living in these horrible conditions, and then they get brought up, and despite Yoda's 700 warnings, at the last minute decides, all right, fuck it, train him, we will. And it being wrong every single time. I really loved Dave Filoni's thing about Ahsoka not being able to be the one to redeem Vader because only his kids could do that. And I connect that to the Freddie Prinze Jr. thing of the Force corrects itself. So after 66, there's 2 Sith, and then boom, we get Luke and Leia. Those are the 2 Jedi, right? Like the Force is, it's just balanced. There's no right and wrong. There's just always a correction there. And with Vader, you can have the argument that he's the chosen one. You could have the argument that Luke was the chosen one. I think that Anakin was the chosen one. He brought balance. But it's also very hard to argue that Palpatine won and none of the 8 movies matter once you consider that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with, like you said about Ahsoka not being able to redeem him, the visual storytelling that it's a fan theory, but it's one that I really enjoy. Of in the Kenobi show, Obi-Wan takes off one side of Vader's helmet. In Rebels and Twilight of the Apprentice, Ahsoka takes off, just happens to be the opposite side, and then Luke's the only one who's able to find Vader within when he takes off the mask at the end of Return of the Jedi. It's such a great the best thing about Star Wars is filling in the gaps. And when you can take a movie that came out in the 80s like Return of the Jedi and then make Clone Wars in 2008, but then also Twilight of the Apprentice about Ahsoka in the mid 2010s, and then give us Kenobi a few years ago, and all of those stories not only align but lift each other up. That's why Star Wars is obviously my favorite thing, based on all the nonsense crap that I have in my room right
Is
behind
that
me.
Star Wars behind you? Oh shit!
No, I really like. This is all Star Trek.
I figured. Well, that's like
Live long and prostate.
I was just gonna say that too, so that's so funny you say that because like I was reading up on it too and kind of thinking about the whole mass thing, and it was like, you know, the death of Darth Vader. Really, he died the moment that he decided to save Luke and kill Palpatine. You know, it wasn't. And then Luke finally is the only one to remove the full mask at once.
Even before that, though,
Yeah.
people would say that he died because, well, not really. Darth Vader died. I'm not the biggest fan of when people say that Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker are
no, I'm
different
not
people.
either.
It's the
That's
same guy.
white apologism.
Yeah.
I think it happened on the bridge when he was walking with Luke. That's exactly when it happened. And the only reason now, it's like the thing of filling in the blanks. Now we know the whole reason he was trying to get Luke to come with him is because he saw what Palpatine had in Outer Rims. That's what he meant when he said, you don't know the power of the dark side. Like, this is better for you. Come stay with me. I think when he says Obi-Wan once thought as you do, starts to sort of see, he remembers that this is his beloved's son. This is the reason why he's like this. This is the last part of Padme he has. And when he's looking back and forth between the Emperor and at Luke when he's dying, I think he's thinking, I'm not going to let you take her away from me again.
He's seeing his entire life flash before his eyes of not only everything I've done has put me in this place, but everything I've done has put the entire galaxy in this place. Those moments and those decisions have caused that to happen.
Not to quote Tony Soprano, what chance did he have with you as a Jedi Master? All right, this guy, he was unprepared. Obi-Wan was 19. He was out looking for broads. You need a Qui-Gon Jinn, Duel of the Fates. Give him the guy with the fucking icicle head.
With that Sopranos impression, I unfortunately have to get back.
I felt it. That's why I was getting the Sopranos, baby. That's what we in the business call got the light.
I love you three so much. Will, I got to talk to you about X97 later in the day. You guys
yes, and what was your first name, by the way?
Brent Danger Birnbaum.
Brent Danger Birnbaum. Okay, God damn it. Thank God. Carlos Spicerina here. Grab a towel on your way in.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, get that sweat rag.
Favorite movie, Will?
Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi is...
hated when it came out.
Do I think Empire is better than Return of the Jedi as a film? Yeah, of course. My favorite, though, from the way that movie is bookended with the beginning of Luke in Jabba's palace is one of the best like half-hour openings of a movie of all time. You are on the edge of your seat the entire time. Han's in carbonite. Oh wait, that assassin is actually Princess Leia. You see Lando creeping around. Luke's there, force choking Gamorrean guard
In black.
in on all black with the brown cloak. Jabba is the inciting incident for the entirety of why The Empire Strikes Back even happens.
Why?
Because Vader needs
Oh,
Han
yes,
to get to Luke. So yeah, we'll use the freezing chamber. Sure, we can test it out here on Cloud City with your bounty, Boba Fett. I need it for my son so I can get him. And with Vader and Luke in the carbon freezing chamber, Vader's not trying to kill Luke for almost the full first 2/3 of that fight until Luke flies out of the carbon freezing chamber and pulls the pipe down.
You think that's
when
when?
Vader's 100%, because before he's just toying with him. Like, I watched it the other day, and look, you can say what you want about the Kenobi series. When Reva is going at Vader and he is just force stopping the lightsaber, and he slices the lightsaber in half and throws one to him like, hey, come on, you want to see what's going on? I'm peak Vader right now, bro.
Peak Vader, I need a challenge.
In the carbon freezing chamber, when he lets Luke just walk right up to him, he lets Luke ignite his lightsaber first. He's slicing around with one hand. He's like fencing at that point where Vader's just toying with him. And then when he thinks he's won, like Vader even does the finger guns like all too easy and turns on the switch with the Force. Like he thinks that he is the best thing to ever happen to the galaxy, and he's won by getting his son in there. And then when Luke jumps out, and impressive.
Most impressive.
When Luke jumps up, that's when he's like, as much as it is Vader toying with him and being like,
not the high ground again.
He's also like, oh, you think you're a Skywalker? You think you're my son? Show me something, son. If you think you are the son of Skywalker, that's where he's getting.
And then that's when Luke starts flipping it. And my favorite part of that fight scene is when he just starts throwing shit at him because he realizes Luke doesn't understand the Force. I thought that you were going to say the part where Vader was actually trying to kill him for a split second. I think that last time they're going down the hallway, that very spooky segment, he's like, okay, I don't have the energy to toy with you anymore. I'm not going to hurt you, but I'm about to fuck you up. I think he would have let him yield had Luke not hit him in the fucking chest plate. And as somebody who grew up in a karate school, inspired my dad and maybe kicked him in the nose once, I know what a reactionary, oh, you didn't mean to hit me that hard thing was. And that's 100% what Vader did. And then because you could tell, he's like, there's no escape. Luke, please don't back up. I am fucked.
And that's why his hand falls. It's disappointment of like, well, that was my last chance. As soon as when he does that, when Luke hits him on the arm and Vader goes back, the first thing Vader does is he comes back and switches off his hand, gets rid of his lightsaber, and immediately disarms him. He could have done that the entire time because Luke doesn't have a lot of lightsaber training. He just has the only thing that Luke uses during that entire battle is what he was just learning with Yoda. The same flips, the same lightsaber combat, even though that's a deleted scene in Empire.
Sure, well, you had to realize Luke had to learn. He fucked around and found out. Ben Kenobi said patience.
The most beautiful part of the Kenobi show for me is what it did for the scene in A New Hope when he's fighting Vader and Obi-Wan looks over and sees Luke and Leia together for the first time. That's it. I did it. Mission accomplished. I brought the twins together. Somebody asked me, one of the questions I got was, do you think the sequels would have been better if George Lucas were at the helm? The prequels weren't. Like, look up the video of him, like, putting his hand on his head, going like, oh, I may have put too much in there.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
Now, I'm not saying that George Lucas didn't make beautiful movies that I love, and I will fight for the prequels to my dying death. But after a certain point, quicker, faster, more intense, that visionary thing is only going to go so far. You can say that there is a Sarlacc monster in the ground that looks like a tentacle and it eats you, and in 20 years I'm going to change it to look like Little Shop of Horrors. You could say that, but on paper it doesn't work. There's something to be said about George writing this movie how many times in the 60s and 70s, and they they only greenlit this because they wanted a new American Graffiti.
Yeah, he wrote it so many times that American Graffiti had to get made.
Yeah,
That's the whole point.
and they're just like, he had to believe, like, I can't think, like, in many ways he's like an Edison almost. I would compare him to Tesla, seriously, like in terms of just what he did and how his brain worked, every movie is influenced by his movies, and it's because the influences that he had on him, he brought his family life and he brought the world around him into it. Both sets of movies, the original trilogy and the one that wasn't about the Iraq War.
Not even just the storytelling and the arcs and the characters and the themes of those original trilogy and the prequels too, but like the technical aspects of the stuff that he was doing on the side with Lucasfilm and ILM and everything that he was setting up there. Movies
Imagine that. They're like, how do we do this? I don't know. Guess we got to invent it. And then they're
we
the
have
guys
to
to
invent
invent it.
Yeah.
Like, you, Slater, you do a lot of art and shit. Can you imagine something like that? Where they're like, we have to make this ship explode from one wire to another, and you have 2 takes. Otherwise, you're fired. They just had to figure it out.
Just the movie magic back then too, and then what it's become now. I think that's why I'm maybe a little more biased towards the prequel over the sequel. But fighting scenes later don't compare to the fighting scenes
in the
before.
Prequels.
Yeah,
you mean the sequels fighting scenes compared to the prequels?
Yeah,
that's also because no one used a lightsaber in 35 years. Do you think there's a such thing as a gray Jedi? I don't think you can be. That's like being a gray sober person.
It's more of a fan denotation to what, when they can't put somebody in a box of red lightsaber bad, blue lightsaber good, they go, oh well, there's something in the between. And what's the in between of black and white when I only have 2 options? Gray.
You don't hear Yoda going, once you start down the dark path, maybe walk on the gray path for a while and see just what part you want to do. Quit being a Jedi, and maybe perhaps open up a cover band at that stick bar. Like, there's no in between, because
what was the, just speaking of lightsaber colors, what was the purple deal? Just I know
Samuel Jackson asked for it and George Lucas gave it to him.
Yeah, well, that's why, because I was just catching that again, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember watching this like when I was younger, and I was like, why is he purple?
There's a great video on YouTube of him on set asking for that, because in the Phantom Menace figures, well, I'm sure you have a few, it's blue. I knew it. No, dude, that's Moff Gideon. Put it away. Dude, you can't do this.
Yeah,
oh,
sorry.
man.
Sorry, that's one of his...
Jesus.
My clones!
The first movie I ever saw was Phantom Menace, and I remember my dad taking me to KB Toys after, and that was the first core memory of my life, I think. And seeing that packaging just bring a lot of good Misa warmth to Misa heart.
I've got, and you're going to be able to see it too, in the box. You know the Jar Jar wristwatch that came with Qui-Gon's casing? 25 years it's been in the box. There's no better time to break it out than seeing it finally for the 25th anniversary. It's going. I'm wearing the Jar Jar watch on my wrist. Who needs a bezel? Who needs a rollie? I got the Jar Jar with the tongue, baby. Let's go.
Holy fucking shit. That Yoda line is one of my favorites, and it sends chills up my spine every day, where he's like, the chosen one the boy may be. Nevertheless, grave danger I sense in his training. That was the only time Yoda was right in those 3 movies.
I also love that when he says that line, the Imperial March plays behind it.
Yes,
yeah, Slater.
And you know, the only time the Jedi Force theme ever plays behind Vader is when he's lifting Palpatine and throwing him into the energy reactor.
Return of the Jedi, baby.
And at the end of Phantom Menace, the celebration song the Gungans are playing, it's Palpatine's theme song slowed down because he's the Phantom Menace.
Dude, that's why the music is so freaking, I keep swearing, sorry. It's so good and important into the movies themselves. Like, it's just, I notice it still, if you rewatch it now, like, just little things that you pick up on every time in the soundtracks. It's crazy how detailed and minute like some of those are, you know?
Yeah, it's the triangle. George Lucas, Ralph McQuarrie.
How long was Ralph McQuarrie on till?
He did all the art for the original trilogy, and then for the prequels, it was Doug Chang.
I remember on that Revenge of the Sith DVD box set where they would show you all the different villains that they were working on for this third
Yeah, dude.
and all the villains in the prequels are supposed to be a different part of what Vader's going to be. So Maul is going to be dismembered, Dooku's a fallen Jedi, and Grievous is going to be all machine and robot and rough and have a cough. And I think that the hardest part for Yoda to reconcile with was him losing Dooku, and that's why he took a hardline stance on them being like, "No, no, no, we're not doing it again." It's like when Barry Gordy said, "We're not hiring the Jackson 5 because I'm so fucking tired of Stevie Wonder." And Yoda, out of anybody in the Jedi Temple, went out of his way to look out for Anakin Skywalker throughout that entire Clone Wars show. He gave him Ahsoka. Do you think Vader didn't seek out Yoda because he was scared of him, or because he knew he couldn't take him? It can't be that.
I think he understood that Yoda was defeated at that point. Where not defeated in the sense of like not being able to fight back, but mentally the trauma. It is true. If there's anybody throughout the Jedi Council who looked out for Anakin, obviously you could say Obi-Wan, but there's that scene of Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Temple, and Yoda is the first one to think, "Oh, we messed up here. We put Ahsoka on trial. We are the ones who did this, and Anakin was right."
How does the Jedi deal with sadness?
It's an emotion, and emotions lead to stronger emotions, and stronger emotions lead to fear of losing that. I mean, there's the whole thing with attachment and why Qui-Gon was considered such a renegade for the Jedi Order because of his ability to want attachment and understand love. So how do they deal with sadness? In the same way they deal with everything else, they suppress it and think, "Oh, we just have to think about the Jedi Order."
Can you remember this quote better than I can, where George Lucas said something about, it's not that the Jedi can't love, it's that they love so compassionately that when what's the quote is like that it's
He's explaining the difference between attachment and possession. George is there explaining to the Clone Wars staff of why all of that matters and understanding the Force, and just sitting down doing the George Lucas thing of like, well, the Force, the reason why it's a mystical being, it's possession versus attachment, and why Qui-Gon wanted to save Anakin, even though his explanation for why he was taking him was, "You'll see your mother again," not "You can't be attached to your mother. You can still love her, but you will be able to see her again," which is what sets it up.
when Anakin slaughters the Tuscans. I remember Qui-Gon going, "Anakin, Anakin, no!" And I turned to my dad and I went, "That was Qui-Gon," and he went, "Shut the fuck up." It's the reason why I say this movie did more to establish the lore of the Clone Wars was because, yes, the writing was extremely wooden. There were parts where you go, "God damn it, that's the first time that's ever been done in a movie before."
So that fight in the arena on Geonosis is the fucking tits. It's my favorite because that was the one where like everything in the background was like shit was going down. You saw a dude with like 2 sabers, like never saw that before. You saw them just like fucking kicking droids in the face. Like it was great, which is weird because it was pretty violent and I was pretty young when I saw it.
You see a live beheading that happens in a Roman Colosseum.
Yeah, like
and you see the head come out of the helmet. Revenge of the Sith, the high ground. Okay, this was the last one I had. Obi-Wan knows Anakin has studied the archive footage of him jumping over Darth Maul and knows what Anakin means when he says, "You underestimate my power." I think Obi-Wan wanted to do exactly to that to Anakin. I don't think he could have killed him, but I think he needed to know that, hey, I want you to live the rest of your life in horrible misery. And it's also the lesson, never do the move that your sensei taught you, man.
Obi-Wan is the physical embodiment of everything that has gone wrong for his entire life.
Yes.
Everything has been taken away from him except for Obi-Wan, and he was forced into being Obi-Wan's son, Obi-Wan's brother, Obi-Wan's apprentice,
They were
Obi-Wan's
like that.
Padawan. They were into a forced friendship, and yeah, they were brothers. And when Obi-Wan is yelling at him, you are my brother, Anakin," there's 2 things that I think of there. There's the disappointment that Obi-Wan has of Anakin, but also the disappointment of letting Qui-Gon down with that promise from the Phantom Menace. It took that long just for Obi-Wan to screw up and not do the exact thing that Qui-Gon said he promised him to do in his dying breath.
There's something about Obi-Wan that, and I hope these aren't one of these things that are ever explained, but he's a cryptic motherfucker in his older age, man. Like, yeah, I don't know. What's the solution here? Do we do 10 Rogue Squadron movies?
I think the solution's animation, to be completely honest with you.
Dude, I do too.
Jump into animation. The Star Wars animation has always been where they shine. There's nothing better than, in my eyes, than that final battle, the Battle of the Heroes and Revenge of the Sith. However, it sets up so much else for 4, 5, and 6, that Obi-Wan being cryptic of like, even the thing with Kenobi of like, your father, you served with my father in the Clone Wars. Like, yeah, you also ran around with me for an entire season of a show while I was a child and saved me from being kidnapped.
The hype, first of all, for Force Awakens, one day I watched it again and I was like, oh.
I didn't mind it the first time I watched it. The only thing that bugged me was I was in the theater dressed as Han Solo, getting ready to see Han Solo come back, and then watching him die in that way. I was like, great, I'm the one motherfucker who's dressed as Han Solo, just ready to watch this guy die. I was there opening day. I was waiting in line 3 hours beforehand. I'm dressed as Han Solo. I'm ready to go. And right off the bridge, Han Solo dies. So not the best viewing experience as a Han Solo fan watching The Force Awakens. When he comes back, though, Chewie, we're home. And that trailer, the first time I saw that trailer, it's immediate tears.
Oh, God. And you can't even blame no plan because George didn't have a plan. But here's the difference between when George Lucas makes a movie and do I think the sequels would have been better if George Lucas were involved in them? Yes.
When people ask, would you have rather seen George Lucas's sequels? Yeah, but that doesn't mean I would delete the sequels that we have now in reference for George's sequels, because those are still people's fans we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast. Like, there are kids who are going to grow up with that and need to see. Sam Witwer has this great quote where he's talking about Last Jedi, and some people needed to see that Luke Skywalker. They needed to know that even though at the end of Return of the Jedi, when he is the hero and he has won and he's defeated his father and he's done the best thing, he can still fail. And when it gets to the Last Jedi, that you can still have that failure and come back and re-redeem, which a lot of people would say
like
is the whole
Thor
point of Luke Skywalker.
in Endgame, you know, like no matter how depressed you get, you still are it.
It's a story of redemption and like his father before him and all that, and it makes sense. I just feel like when it got to The Last Jedi, it's the same. When it gets to the sequels, do I think George Lucas would have made better sequels? Yes, for the exact same reasons why he left and he didn't, because he cared about his story at the end of the day. People can be mad about George Lucas as much as they want. I think he made 6 great movies, and I would have loved to see 9 of them. That's it. If he made the last 3 and they sucked, I would have been the first person to tell you.
One cool thing about Rise of Skywalker was the opening. That Mustafar opening was cool.
Adam Driver did great with what he had to do. He did an awesome job.
I know what I have to do, but I don't have the strength to do it. Who do you think was really the chosen one, Annie or Luke? P.S. The pod is fucking banging. Well, I'll ask you to keep those comments to yourself. This is a Q&A, sir.
Anakin is the chosen one.
Yeah, he is. He brought balance.
Yeah, chosen one doesn't have to be a good guy. It's just the guy who brought balance to the Force, and that was the whole thing with the prophecy, and he did that. He brought balance to the Force with twins. There's 2 of them.
Twins. Fuck, marry, kill. Admiral Akbar, Salacious B. Crumb, or Jar Jar Binks. I'm going to kill Salacious because I'm not going to be able to handle that.
Yep.
Marry Akbar because he has a pension.
Correct.
Fuck Jar Jar.
Because of the tongue.
Because of the tongue. Yeah. Jar Jar, you got to get some of it. You got to see what's happening. You don't want that for life. Playing jizz in the background. We don't know what's happening.
Misa, throw it back. Misa, have rusty trombone. How do you fix the problem Disney created with people not dying from saber stabs? A lightsaber is not a sword. It's a cauterizing blade that more often than not, like the thing that kills you when you get stabbed is the internal bleeding. A lightsaber essentially stops all of that until... I mean, at least it did when George Lucas figured that rule out, and he didn't know it in A New Hope.
When it comes to Qui-Gon being stabbed of like, oh, Qui-Gon's the only guy who can die from a lightsaber stab. Honestly, hot take, I think Qui-Gon wanted to die in that moment because he's been doing all that study to become a Force ghost and become... Qui-Gon never shut up about being a part of the living Force, and he finally sees his opportunity. He's laying there, hey, Obi-Wan, take care of the boy, make sure he is the chosen one. I'm going to go do the only thing that I've wanted to do my entire life as a Jedi and become part of the living force. This is my way out. Deuces. And then you see him become a Force ghost in Kenobi. I think he kind of was like, even if they could save him, I think he would have been pissed about them saving him. He was like, no, wait. He did the Pa Kent thing
yes,
in Man of
in
Steel.
Man of Steel. Yeah. I agree with you. I think he would have wanted at least 2 years with Anakin first as a base level training. But in that moment where like it's undeniable you're gonna go, Qui-Gon would immediately know, okay, this is over, and also know this is the next step. This is me becoming the living force.
Not necessarily like going into the fight with Maul of like, hey, I'm just looking for any opportunity to die and become a Force ghost, is when he already knows it's over. He has said the entirety of that movie, it's the will of the Force. The Force works in mysterious ways. We have to follow the Force. The Force is going to give us our end, our way out of this. The Force presented himself with death. He's like, okay, this is what the Force wants. And he trusted the Force in that moment, and that's how he died.
He was very defensive in that fight, like, because I think he knew Obi-Wan was going to be hot-headed and offensive and wanted to really show himself off. But Maul didn't give a crap about Obi-Wan at all. He wasn't even looking at him. He was like, I want the master. I'm going to get the master. And Qui-Gon had the best move in that whole fight where Maul knocks down Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon just goes, you gonna knock down my apprentice? Bitch slap.
Don't take your weapons. You won't need them.
Master Qui-Gon, you're not gonna need only what you take with you. These hands.
If you were a Jedi, who would you want your master to be?
That's a good question. I would have to go with Obi-Wan.
Wow. Why?
Because he's always been my favorite Jedi. Because he's the most well-rounded Jedi. He has the best saber combat stance. He's very well-rounded. He's had to spend a lot of time under the tutelage of someone who was trying to preach him about the Force, but he was way more interested in learning the language and learning the planets that were around him. And I think that's why he was such a bad fit for Anakin, because Anakin didn't care about any of that. And Obi-Wan, to me, up until the last good thing Obi-Wan did in my eyes was put out the message warning all surviving Jedi to stay away from the temple, because his plan was horrible. Plan was, all right, let's put Luke on a planet for 20 years, and then when he's good and ready, I'm going to take him to a bar, gaslight him, and then get him to kill his father. And then he gets all pissy when Luke goes, I can't do it, Ben. I can't kill my own father. And then he goes, the Emperor's already won. Who do you think would win, Dooku or Mace Windu in a lightsaber battle?
Dooku.
100%.
Dooku is the best swordsman in the galaxy. However, the thing that makes him lose in Revenge of the Sith is his confidence that him and Palpatine are the ones who will rule the galaxy. That's what makes him lose. It's his hubris, not his ability to fight with a lightsaber. Because as soon as he realizes that Anakin, oh, wait, and he puts two and two together of, wait, the rule of two. Wait, that is a thing that he's always told me. He's replacing me. These lightsabers are by my neck. Oh. Although Thrawn has been a compelling character in the animated series and books, are you interested in seeing that story continue in the big crossover movie after the lackluster story of Ahsoka and the little presence he had?
Oh my God, lackluster? What do you people want? Do you not understand? Mustache is coming off. Do you not understand that nobody has wielded weapons of a Jedi other than Ahsoka in 30 years, probably longer at this point, getting closer to 40. And on top of that, none of the Empire have been in training. They have all been in hiding and malnourished. And on top of that, the ones that were on, because people were shitting on the choreography in Ahsoka. Those stormtroopers who were there with Thrawn, wherever he was he wasn't on Dathomir, was he?
No, Peridia.
Right, yeah. So like those troopers were either zombies or they were, I don't know what Enoch's deal was, but like we're telling different periods of a Star Wars timeline that exists in one galaxy. It's not like DC where they can reboot it every few years. I mean, what more did you want out of a show? Like, I've honestly loved every live action Star Wars show. I even really like Book of Boba Fett.
Book of Boba Fett gave us that Luke Skywalker episode. I cried the entire time.
Always get back up.
Get back up. Always get back up.
and talking about Yoda and feel the Force around you. And that's the Luke Skywalker that when people talk about legends of who's Luke Skywalker and where was he before The Last Jedi, that's the guy.
El Miko in the trenches. Was that the Battlefront 2 guy's name? Miko? Or like he was like, I know who you are. Why did you help me?
Because you asked.
I know who you are. Why'd you help me?
Because you asked.
What else is there?
A choice.
The rebellion?
No. A choice to be better.
That's something like I get a lot of people criticize Mark Hamill a lot for his performance from 4 and 5 was very different from what he did in 6, but it's because that's his transition. That's him becoming a Jedi Knight. That's him just learning his arch nemesis was his father. That's him just learning his father figure lied to him, but he's also not really sure. He has to be stoic and removed in distance because he learns the lesson that compassion leads to jealousy, and that's the shadow of greed. Now knowing that's his father, and now seeing that all of that happened, he probably wouldn't have even found that truth out if he didn't have the balls to be like, I can save Han and Leia, which is what Obi-Wan told him. He was like, if you want to know what they fight for, you got like maybe a 1 to 90 chance of getting out of there, dog. Sorry. So like he spent that year humbled. I always liked when R2 would show Luke memories. I always like that when we get that. I mean, like that could honestly be its own 8-episode animated show right there. Just like them going on different little things. And he's like, R2, show me a clip of my mom, you know, like, because Luke never saw his mother, and he never had a relationship with his father, you know. And I also think it's very important that Luke see Anakin killing younglings, and because that has to continually remind him that you can be redeemed, because that is Luke's whole thing. Is compassion is boundless. Luke Skywalker's character can be summarized into one word, and that one word is compassion. You have that, and you have Luke, because Luke is all about compassion. I'm sorry, that's his whole thing. Like he through the end.
The stuff with R2 being able to show Luke footage of Padme and even Anakin in the Clone Wars and Ahsoka and everything like that. The thing that I want most out of Star Wars, and why I say that I think animation is the future, I don't need to see another deepfake Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill. As much as I really enjoyed it and I love that I get it, I don't need to see it anymore. Give me an animated series that's set after Return of the Jedi, where Luke is building his Jedi Order, and it's kind of like what we got in the Battlefront campaign, where he's going to search for Jedi, holocrons, and Sith secrets, because he's just trying to learn and be better than everybody else who came before him. That whole Rey, you are all the Jedi now. Every Jedi has lived through you. Let Luke feel it before it gets to Rey, and that's the one thing that I just wish we had seen more than the sequels.
No, that's annoying. Well, to your point of R2 and the memory thing, there was a really good question on here about like who would your little sidekick be? Would it be like a Wookiee? Would it be? That was a good one. And I was thinking about it before because I saw it and I was like, yo, I would totally pick a droid. I feel like because they're just loyal as shit. They'll do whatever you fucking say, and then they'll show you history, you know. So I feel like the knowledge is power thing. I would pick a droid.
Am I gonna have to learn another language if I get an R2?
Like the deleted scene where Anakin is speaking droid to R2.
No, he said.
He said, "Go down."
It's broken. Can you understand what he's saying? I'm not a protocol droid. I'm pretty sure that beep is down.
For utility sakes and for usefulness, I would say a droid. And I wouldn't want a Wookiee because they live to be like 200, and I don't want him outliving me.
If I had to pick, I'm going droid, just because like. You think of Cal Kestis with BD.
Yes.
You think of, dude, Huyang? Huyang is
dog.
the man.
Right there, yeah. Over how many? 1,500 years old?
He's like 10,000 years old. He's as old as the Jedi Order. He was there when the Jedi Order started. They turned Huyang on.
He looked at your mother and said, "Nice to meet you, ma'am." That's how old Huyang is.
Is the most controversial thing about Star Wars its fan base.
Yes. Because of what they did to Jake Lloyd. Why do you think Disney owns Star Wars? Because George Lucas was like, all right, you know what? You guys can have them. It's like that Lisa Simpson line where she's like, careful how you talk to comic book guy about Star Wars. He hates Star Wars, and his favorite thing is Star Wars.
Handwritten script for Star Wars by George Lucas?
Princess Leia's anti-jiggle breast tape. Film reel labeled alternate ending. Luke's father is Chewbacca. Oh! I'll give you $5 for the box.
Why do you think that is, though? I feel like there's a lot, like there's comparable, like at a size of audience and fan base as Star Wars to other things, and it's such, like, just going back to what it's all about. It's such like a spiritual, deep understanding kind of I don't know, way of life, and I feel like fans of that try to mirror it probably in their daily life. So why is it such a disconnect?
Because people use these movies as life replacements a lot of the time, and then they sort of fold in and become experts, and like is one of the reasons why I love Brent, and one of the main focuses with this pod was like I always wanted to focus on the stuff we liked about the thing, because that's way you get that back, like if you're a cesspool and you are completely shitting on things, which I think we critique, we don't shit on, and when we do, it's funny, and I don't think anyone's feelings would get hurt. People are very, very, I mean, look what they did to Jake Lloyd. That's really all it needs to tell you.
The thing of Star Wars fans hate Star Wars more than anybody else is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, to put it in Star Wars terms, of like when people grow up loving Star Wars, like for me, when I was growing up with Star Wars, I was just happy to get new Star Wars all the time. I didn't care what it was. Star Wars is here. It's a video game. It's a mobile app.
And we played all the LucasArts games.
I didn't know the prequels were hated until I got to like high school, because I was playing Lego Star Wars. I had all the action figures. I was watching the stuff.
Public
like,
Commando.
I was going on Cartoon Network and watching Clone Wars and the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars series, the micro series. Like,
I was playing the Clone Wars game every day. I was going on Hasbro.com and making collages every day.
Burger King toys, cereal boxes.
I still have the twist toppers, the dreidels.
The Tooth Tunes toothpaste, toothbrushes.
Favorite Jedi Sith outside the big four: Luke, Anakin, Vader, Obi-Wan.
That's the big four. Qui-Gon.
Plo
Koon? Dude, I love Plo Koon.
That's what I was going to say.
Plo Koon was my answer to that question of if you were a Jedi, who would you want your master to be? Plo Koon is like Obi-Wan with an extra 200 years of wisdom.
Seriously, but he can't back his head out of the driveway, if you know what I mean. Top 3 Star Wars movies. Will.
Return of the Jedi, Empire, and then it gets real dicey.
Yes, it does.
It's for the 25th anniversary, I'm going to say Phantom Menace, because we're going to watch that movie this weekend, and then I'm going to be like, man, I love that movie.
Yeah.
But then right after that, I'm going to watch Attack of the Clones on the plane ride home and be like, damn, I love this movie. So it's whatever movie I watch last is my third pick.
Thank you for saying that, because I was going to say Attack of the Clones is in my top 3, because Attack of the Clones and Empire have such a similar vibe. And I would honestly put Return of the Jedi. Those would be my top 3.
I think you guys are gonna hate it, but I think 3 is Revenge of the Sith, 2 is Phantom Menace, and Attack of the Clones is 1, just because I'm partial to it.
None of the originals.
I mean, New Hope would be 4. I feel like I'm partial to it because that was like the first one I saw. That was my poster. That was my poor poster. Yeah, I really have a weird obsession. I'm gonna get a tattooed on my ass.
Well, true believers, from a certain point of view, what I told you was true. And Will and I have been looking forward to this episode for a very long time. I'm glad that we got Brent on. I'm glad we got the whole Jedi Council on. You have been nothing but great to us. Thank you so much for 3,000 subscribers on YouTube, 12 on OnlyFans. And I just couldn't thank you enough. I'm so proud of the work that we've done here. I'm so grateful for the community that we knit, and thank you for hanging out with us every Sunday to talk nerd. And I hope next time a nerd says something you don't agree with, you'll just realize that they're going to be wrong forever, and there's no sense in fighting with them. Because then if you don't, you get to have this. You get to have friendship and toys that each other bought. And thank you for spending your Sundays with us, or Mondays, whenever you get out of bed, you unemployed. No good, scruffy looking nerf herder. the Force will be with you, and that's about it, Luke.